Honestly, I used to have maybe a 20 to 30% success rate with my cuttings. Now it's actually closer to perhaps 95. Not perfect, but almost. Here's exactly what I changed. Look, I get it. You feel like you did everything right. You've got a nice clean jar, you've got fresh water, you've got a perfect spot by the window and nice bright light, but 3 weeks later you see absolutely nothing. Or worse, you see that slimy, disgusting, greeny black stem that just makes you question absolutely everything you've done in terms of the plant world, being a plant parent. Honestly, I was exactly where you are, if you can't quite tell what I'm talking about. Frustrated, confused, and I started to think that I was actually cursed when it came to propagations. I thought everybody else could do it and I couldn't. And then I started to find out I was actually just making some small mistakes that nobody was really talking about. So today, I'm just going to take you through 5 subtle mistakes that could be sabotaging your success, and you'll see how simple the fixes are that will make all the difference to your propagations. And obviously they made all the difference to mine. So let's get into it. Okay, so you need to know that your cutting isn't just there to sit there and look pretty for you. I mean, it does, but that little stem is starting to build new structures, it's activating growth hormones, and yes, it is breathing. So if you cut off that oxygen supply, you're essentially suffocating your cutting before it's even really started, which is unfortunate. That's why that murky water that everyone ignores, you know, when it goes green and algae, it's actually stopping your stem from getting oxygen. Your cutting is drowning in its own waste. It looks disgusting and it's not helping that little stem grow. And if your jar is too narrow and the water's too stagnant and it hasn't been replaced for a while, you're creating a really unhealthy place for that stem and it just won't grow for you. And the fix, obviously, if you can't hear it in my voice, is probably almost embarrassingly simple, and that is just make sure you're changing your water every 4 to 5 days. Make sure you're using clean jars with wide openings, not narrow vases that trap air. You can buy, and I have fallen for it, little vases in wooden stands that look absolutely adorable, but if there's not enough air in the top and you put a lot of water in and you don't change that water, it's just not the best way to grow that cutting. And if you're feeling a little fancy, you can always buy one of those air stones and add it into the water, and it will just help maintain the water freshness and the airflow and the oxygen through that water. Pro tip, if you see those tiny bubbles forming on your cuttings, that's actually a really good sign. That means that there's oxygen exchange happening around that stem. Now, I have heard people talk about not throwing out that water because there's growth hormone activated in the water. And look, that might be true, but you still need the oxygen, and that little stem is creating its own growth hormone anyway. So my advice is swap it every 4 to 5 days, and that seems to work really well for me. Take it as you will, I'd say. Okay, this next tip is one that is so simple, you're probably going to think I'm making it up, but just try it anyway. I want you to, when you're putting the cuttings in the jar or the cup, don't let the tip of the cutting touch the base of the jar. That's it. That's the whole tip. I know it sounds a little absurd, right? It sounds a little weird. Like, how could something that basic actually matter? But here's the thing, and I learned this a little bit of the hard way. When that stem sits flat against the glass or the jar, you're creating a oxygen-starved pressure point where rot actually really loves to come and grow and have a little party. Now, it's only small, don't get me wrong, and it's not the biggest thing, but as soon as I started raising my stem cuttings off the base, I just found that they grew a lot easier. Think of it this way. It's like leaving a wet book on a table. Say you've got a book sitting on a table, you've accidentally spilled some water, and there's water forming between the pages of the bottom of the book and the table, and there's no air. And what starts to happen is the top of the book will dry, but that bottom part gets soggy and starts falling apart if you leave it there too long, right? Because there's no air circulation there. Now, I have lost quite a few cuttings to this before, especially with those plants that are more thicker stems. Like my ZZ plant really loves it when you've got it like suspended a little bit. Ficus plants seem to do better, and fiddle leaf fig cuttings seem to do a lot better when they're not sitting on the base. It's not the be all end all, don't get me wrong, but it does help, and especially, as I said, especially with some of those harder plants, it really helps me a lot. And honestly, that's exactly why I like using some kind of propagation medium, not just water. Personally, I think there's a few things or a few reasons, but one of the big reasons is you put a little bit of the propagation medium in first into your jar or whatever it is, and then you can put your cuttings on top. And so your cuttings are still pretty much suspended off the base, and they still get a lot of air circulating at the bottom of the stem because this medium is a sphagnum moss and it's really light and it's really airy. That's what it's there to do. When I used to do propagations, I was just plonking them into the jar like I was with a flower arrangement, right? It didn't really matter. But now I'm really obsessed with making sure that I'm creating some kind of suspension system. One of my very first videos that I put onto Instagram when I first started the channel is how I created a little bit of a suspension system in a vase with some tape, and that's how I grow my spider cuttings. And I still do it that way because it actually looks really aesthetically pleasing as well. So use whatever you can DIY, right? Mesh lids, tape grids, you know, put some elastic bands around the jar so they sit across the top. Make whatever you can to help keep your stem cuttings off the base. This is not the best example, but this is something I'll explain a little bit later. If you want to be fancy, you can buy something out there. As I said, there's plenty of like, there's little wire things that you put on top of the jar. I've seen them on social media everywhere, but there's plenty of DIY ways you can do it as well. You just need your cutting to hang out in that water and not sit on the base if you can. You can also basically just use the leaf, the like part of the leaf. So see there's a little edge there. Just make sure that sits against the top of the jar, and then here we go. I'll see if I can actually put this. Sits the top of the jar, and you can see there the base is not sitting at the bottom, right? So I've got it tipped over, I'm moving it around, so that doesn't help me, but you get my point. Honestly, it's such a small change that I did, but I found the difference surprisingly real. Like it made quite a bit of difference, especially for those harder plants. Okay, this next one is a little bit of confession time for me. So when I used to propagate, I used to put it in the brightest light I could find, right next to my really bright window, because my logic and my thinking at the time was bulletproof in my head anyway. More light equals more growth. But that's not what a cutting wants at first. In fact, cuttings and established plants, and if you think about it, it makes sense, they actually have different lighting needs. Cuttings and propagations aren't photosynthesizing yet that much. They're just trying to survive and build roots. That little stem is just trying to, you know, activate itself through growth hormones and grow as much as it can. So really bright light when it comes to propagations can actually stress those plants. It might even do a little bit of light burn on the leaves, and it can slow the growth down. It can slow everything down. Think of it like giving someone a workout plan while they're still in recovery. They don't need a spotlight. They just need a soft blanket and a bit of a rest. So give your cuttings softer, indirect light. That's why you see a lot of grow lights with that yellow light as opposed to that really bright white light. It does help for cuttings, but at the same time, if you don't have one of those yellow lights, I don't like buying them personally. I don't like those grow lights. I still have the bright white lights, but I put it a lot further away, right? So if you're going to use a window, put it at least 2 to 3 feet away. If you're going to use a grow light, dim it down if you've got dimmable settings. Or again, just put it further away. The further away you go from the grow light, obviously, the less intense they are. But for me, I love those translucent propagation boxes that naturally diffuse the light. You can buy them from any storage place, from IKEA, from your local, Walmart, or here it's Kmart, or where did I get Bunnings? I bought mine from Bunnings. They're almost like a white tub. You can see through them, but they're not completely clear. So they're beautiful, not only to create the right environment, but just diffuse the light enough to give such really nice soft light to your cuttings. And then once I see proper roots developing, then I can gradually turn up the intensity of the lighting and bring it up a little bit more so I can start really creating more growth for that plant. And tip number 4, speaking of prop boxes, this next tip that significantly helps your propagations succeed is humidity. Yes, we're back to the humidity conversation if you've seen the last few of my videos. And I'm not talking about just a little moisture in the air. I'm talking about creating a proper microclimate for your cuttings. I've got one here. This is why I'm obsessed with propagation boxes, right? Clear containers with lids that trap the humidity while still allowing airflow in this box. It's like giving your cuttings their own little greenhouse, but you just don't have to pay $5,000 for a really expensive one. This little tub here is from Kmart that I bought it from, and the lighting is diffused because it's got those stripes, even though it's almost clear on the other side. So again, it's a really beautiful soft light that comes into this box, and I've got sphagnum moss on the bottom so the cuttings aren't touching the very base. And again, it just creates its own humidity and microclimate. Honestly, the difference is incredible. Cuttings that would normally sit there for weeks suddenly start showing like those little bumps in those roots in like days almost. It's like they finally have an environment they've been craving, and it just makes things so much happier with the root growth. I absolutely love it. I don't hardly do anything in water anymore. I usually go for some kind of propagation box, big or small. Or even with something like this, I'll have a little bit of a propagation box, and this is just an old, here's a better example. This is just an old, or a reused, I should say, iced coffee cup, right? You can see that now, right? Scroll goes in the top, and I keep them with the lids because it's got a little bit of a hole to allow for oxygen flow and getting in. But as you can see, it creates humidity. Look at all that water in there, even with the hole in the lid. So I definitely try and create a little microclimate. And then the final tip is, and this one is quite big, and I know a lot of commercial growers use it. And if you see people that really are serious about growing propagations and nurseries and all of that, this is the one tip they love when it comes to growing small plants and propagating. And that is a cozy butt. Okay, what I mean by that is putting heat or warmth at the base of your tub or your pot or your growth cutting, right? So I don't mean warm air. I don't mean cozy room temperature. I'm talking about a gentle warmth, like a heat mat coming up from below, right where those roots are starting to form. And that's exactly what I've done with this cutting jar here. I had it directly on a heat mat. And the crazy part is this single change can literally, I would say, almost cut your rooting time in half, cut your rooting growth time, rooting time. You know what I mean. I'm not exaggerating when it comes to the plants. I can't believe I just said that weirdly. Back to my point, I've seen cuttings that normally take 4 to 6 weeks to start propagation and start their root development, turn down to like 2 weeks with consistent heat at the base of the propagation jar or tub or cup or whatever you're using. Now, why is that? It's because root development happens faster when the node area stays warm. I'm not going to go through the different parts of the plant. I can do another whole video if you want me to go specifically through every single part of the plant. Let me know in the comments below if you want me to do that, but not today. But just know that if you're adding warmth to the base, it's like giving your cuttings cellular activity, or that like action that's happening, a nice, beautiful, gentle boost. And that's why a lot of things happen in springtime, because it's got that little bit more warmth. The ground is starting to warm up ever so slightly, and it just works beautifully. So I use a seedling heat mat, and you can set it to turn it on and off. I always have it to about a low setting, around 20 degrees Celsius. I'll add the Fahrenheit in there, I can't quite remember, but I think it's about 65, is it? But you can also try putting it on things that are in warm spaces around your home, like the top of your fridge if it gets the right amount of light, or just any consistently warm spot. Don't go for a dry heat on top of your heater because that's dry air. Just make sure you've got the humidity as well as the warmth. Just avoid anything that might cook your cuttings. You want a nice, soft, heated blanket vibe. You don't want to cook it. You don't want an oven. And speaking of temperature, consistency in that temperature is key too. So try not to have that temperature wildly fluctuating up and down. That's why you just buy one of those heat mats and you put your propagations on the bottom, onto that heat mat, and they just sit there as long as it takes for the 3 or 4 weeks that your propagations need to take. You know what I'm saying. What is with my words today? Just look for stable, gentle warmth. It's a true friend when it comes to propagations. Okay, my point is, what a day. My point is, once I started combining that warmth trick with my humidity trick, my propagation game leveled up immensely. Like it just went from, as I said, 20-30% to almost 95%. Those 5 things that I'm doing now are giving me so many cuttings, I don't even know what to do with them. So trust me, grab a heat mat for your propagations because you will thank me later, I promise you. Honestly, such a difference. So look, successful propagation isn't about having a magical plant touch. It's not about having a black thumb or a green thumb. It's about understanding what is actually happening and giving your cuttings what they need when they need it, right? Don't get me wrong. I've absolutely killed my fair share of cuttings, my propagations, more than I would like to admit. But each failure kind of taught me something. And now, as I said, my propagation station is basically a plant nursery. I have so many propagations around. I was looking this morning in this house, just sitting a little bit here, a little bit here, and a little bit here. I've got too many. I need to organize myself, actually. I do have a growing tent downstairs. I should probably do something with that. It's been there for like 12 months or something. Anyway, I digress. Honestly, do these 5 things and I promise you, you will find such a difference in the success of your propagations. My tongue is tied this week. Now look, if you're tired of the guesswork with any of your plants, not just with propagations, that's exactly why I created my digital tool called My Plant Buddy. It's a custom GPT and it's made specifically to help you and your plants and your specific plants. It's literally plant care made easy with advice made exactly for you. You just have to tell it about your plant, where you live, like the city, and your experience level, and it gives you custom recommendations, not generic advice, custom specific recommendations that actually work for you. So no confusion, no conflicting advice online. It's specific to what you need to help you grow that plant to its best luscious healthiness, if that's even a word. Anyway, links in the description below. Have a look as you need. And if you want more information, I've actually just created a brand new website. Come have a look. I'll also leave that in the comments below and you can read even more detail about it. And speaking of propagations, right now, that's why I've got this. This is what I mentioned it briefly before. Right now, I have a really pretty cool, I think. I mean, I'm not the coolest person in the world, but I think it's cool. I'm running what I'm calling a propagation showdown. So it's basically a test that I'm doing across 6 to 8 weeks. And I'm testing 6 different propagation mediums, including sphagnum moss, water, and 4 others I won't mention. And I'm doing that with 6 different types of plants. So as you can see here, syngoniums, monsteras, pothos, etc., etc. I won't name them all because you'll have to wait until you see this next video. And the question that I'm trying to answer is, which propagation method actually works the best? Oh, that's a big one, isn't it? So, is water really king, or have we been sleeping on some kind of other medium that makes things even easier for us and we don't even know it? The results are already coming through. I'm watching it so closely, you can't imagine. I've put it into a situation with all of the top 5 things on a heat mat, with good humidity, with good air watering. I'm changing the watering out. I've had to fill it up a few times actually. So it's all in very good condition, but all the conditions are the same for every plant and every medium. So it's really exciting. So I really do want to see which medium works the best. I'm talking too much about it already. You are going to have to make sure you're subscribed so you can watch that video next, and it'll come up in a few days after this one is launched. So what I want to know is, what's your biggest propagation challenge right now? And more importantly, what propagation method do you absolutely love? Do you swear by? Drop it in the comments below. Do you have a favorite? Which propagation method do you think is going to win out of all of my propagation methods? Tell me which one you think is going to be the king of kings in this showdown. I can't wait. Anyway. Until then, make sure you keep experimenting with plants, keep learning, and remember, every plant expert or plant YouTuber out there still once had a black thumb and just got really good at problem solving, and that's exactly what my channel is all about. I'm here to help you problem solve and grow your confidence, as well as some beautiful, luscious, healthy plants. So thank you very much for joining me. As I said, make sure you're subscribed to see this next video all about my propagation showdown. But until then, have an amazing week full of leaves, love, and laughter. As always, you know how it goes, and I will see you in this next video. See you later. Bye.